Good afternoon and welcome. This is a special meeting of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force called for Thursday, February 17, 2011 at 5 p.m. and beginning at 5:28 p.m. Roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Member Snyder, Snyder excused. Member Nee.
Here.
Nee present. Member Cawthon, Cawthon excused. Member Manny.
Present.
Manny present. Member Washburn.
Present.
Washburn present. Member Knepper. Knepper excused. Member Wolf.
Here.
Wolf present. Member Chan. Chan present. Member Johnson.
Here.
Johnson present. Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Would you read the first item, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The first item is discussion on whether A, to continue the section-by-section changes to the proposed ordinance amendments, or B, to focus on the half dozen or so issues that the task force believes need the most immediate redress.
I will preface this by recalling that last year, well into spring, we were discussing section-by-section changes, and the deadline passed for us to get anything to the Board of Supervisors to enable them to get it on the ballot by last November. So the question, since that time, there have been suggestions both from within the task force and from some interested citizens that instead of picking up where we left off, we simply go back, focus on the half dozen or so items that we feel really need most urgently to be fixed or to be added, and try and work that way. So that's the point we're at now, is to make that decision. Is that the way we want to go, or do we want to pick up where we left off last year? And I open it to discussion. Member Washburn.
I tend to favor the idea of concentrating on half a dozen or so of the most important issues that we've come to realize through all of our work are items that need to be strengthened or cleared up. But I also remember there was quite a bit of work done, particularly by former member Erica Craven Green, to just kind of clean up the language or clarify things some more. I wouldn't say they're merely cosmetic, but they're minor changes that nonetheless will make for a better, cleaner ordinance. So I would argue that, or advocate that we make those changes, and then for the more substantive things, concentrate on the ones that will enable us to continue to push the law forward for increased sunshine, and also to give us more teeth, sharper teeth to enforce what we're doing.
Okay. Member Wolf.
Yeah, I'd like to, did I jump in? Okay. I agree, and I think one of the things that we found out is things that require like minimal clarification in typographics and kind of grammatical corrections can be done at the board level because it doesn't change the ordinance substantively. It's the other items like the change from task force to commission kind of thing that would have to go to the ballot. I think if we're going to ask supervisors to put this on the ballot, that I think a good idea is to pick 6, but that will probably may get 3 or 4. That they may not take the whole package, depending upon their, what they feel at the time. So I would like to shoot for the sky and settle for the treetops. Not get driven into the roots.
Okay. Member Johnson.
I agree with that. Also, I think that looking back on the really long, detailed changes, I think it would be hard to get one of the supervisors interested, especially in light of the budget cuts and especially in light of Jerry Brown highlighting that it's part of a problem of the budget of California.
Okay. Member Chan, any comments?
I'll I'm not sure, but would it affect the budget if
Well,
we
I
have these
believe,
changes?
well, I believe Governor Brown wants to in effect excuse cities and counties and school districts and so forth from having to post their agendas if they cannot afford to do so. Right now, cities and counties, et cetera, have been claiming that posting budgets is expensive, and that in this day and age, with money so tight, it actually prevents them. It cuts deeply into their own budgets, and so they would prefer being excused from having to post their agendas. And so I think that that particular waiver is about to expire, and I think Governor Brown is proposing to make the waiver permanent through the end of the fiscal year. Is that correct?
Yeah.
The end of the fiscal
2012.
year. I'm sorry?
Yeah, 2012.
2012. The question, I'm not sure that would excuse that the waiver would extend to San Francisco, because we are governed by the Sunshine Ordinance, in addition to the California Public Records Act and the Brown Act, and this is really a Brown Act issue. But in addition to those, we have the Sunshine Ordinance, and I think, without being an attorney and without having our deputy city attorney present, without having our voting attorney member present, I am not so sure that our agencies and entities here in the city could claim that exemption, because our Sunshine Ordinance goes further than the Brown Act does in requiring openness. And perhaps we could, if any city entity tried to claim that waiver, perhaps somebody could bring them before us and we could make that decision. But where does, in terms of the direction that we are taking here, I tend to agree with the other members who have spoken that our best chance is to focus on the 5 or 6 items that we feel most urgently need to be addressed, and then see if we could find 4 supervisors to put it up on the ballot. I think we have a consensus there. I'm not sure if an actual vote on this is necessary. I think consensus would suffice, unless anybody wants to make a formal motion.
I would just call for any objections and move on.
I would also ask, there are people in the audience who might want to speak to this particular issue, so if there is anybody, please step forward. We would ask that speakers to assist the clerk fill out speaker cards, but it's not required, and anonymity is certainly, the right of anonymity is certainly there if you wish.
Hi, Kimo Craftsman.
3 minutes, please.
I think you should take advantage of all the time and money that's been spent improving the ordinance that is in the draft version. There's been a tremendous amount of time and effort spent on that. And if you want to, address 5 or 6 or 10 more items that you think are more pressing that haven't been addressed there, then go ahead, put them on top. But I don't think you should just throw out all that effort and work that's been put into that draft ordinance that's been there. It's been worked on for a couple of years. Additionally, this whole issue of thinking you can go to the Board of Supervisors to get them to put on the ballot, I think is a pipe dream, and always has been a pipe dream. It's clear at one point that Ross Mercury gave you guys the wrong dates so that you'd miss the deadline on an earlier version of the putting it on the ballot. We know what happened when Doug Comstock's version of the draft ordinance came before the BOS. They amended the hell out of it, and they ended up having to withdraw support for it. There's just too many enemies for Sunshine in City Hall that it's ever going to make it through the BOS in any fashion. I think this whole shooting for the sky thing and settling for the treetops is ridiculous. Let's remember, Prop G did not shoot for the sky and settle for the treetops. It shot for the sky and it got the sky. And the way they got it is they went to the voters and got the signatures, and then they put it on the ballot, and it was approved. That's the only way you're going to get a strong ordinance, is to only work with the voters who always support strong open government. And I think you're really handicapping yourself by even putting it out there as an option going through the BOS. As I said, Mercury submarined it once. Another time, the BOS amended the hell out of it in rules. That's going to continue to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further public comment?
I see a number of problems, whether you take the whole thing and review it or just identify these so-called hot button fixes. The process itself, as you've gone through, those of you who went through it over the last few years, was a really tedious process. And it demonstrated certain weaknesses in how this thing was addressed and put together. I think the fact that Erica is no longer on the task force would complicate things, because essentially there is no one now who could actually do the legal side of it. I understand Mr. Snyder's qualified, but I just want to point out that the Compliance and Amendments Committee has been working on a redraft of the ethics regs, sunshine regs, that started in August. We're talking 10 pages, and we're not there yet. This is 6 months later. So first you would have the time you would spend identifying the problems. Then you have to figure out how long it would take, given that for these special meetings, you barely get a quorum, and that happened frequently during the time you were trying to do the complete amendment. If there's a demand on the members' time as it is, this would just add to it, and the fact is that that would reduce their ability to deal with some of the basic issues of the folks that keep coming up with problems. Once you're done with all that, after having many meetings with no quorum, who's going to pull together the support and manage the process? That's a big question. And finally, I may be the only one that thinks this, but I think that the city attorney's office would go very far to try to undermine many of the substantive provisions. Just looking at Mr. Threet's memorandum, I mean, the basic issue about putting in something that the Sunshine Ordinance trumps the charter, that's going to send all kinds of flares up in the city attorney's office, and they're going to go after you hammer and tongs on something like that. So I just think, I mean, I have no objection to your going to the hot button issues and trying to fix them. I just think you should be wary of the process and how long it's going to take, and to try to figure out the most efficient way of doing it.
Thank you. Is there further public comment?
Good evening, Thomas Piccirillo. I'm in favor of, picking out 5 or 6 items. And working out some tentative legislation and giving it to the Board of Supervisors. We all know the Sunshine Ordinance is not working in a lot of respects. Orders of determination aren't getting enforced. Respondents aren't showing up at hearings. So, if this task force can, reach consensus of which are the 5 or 6 most important issues that need to be addressed, I'm all in favor of that. I think what you need to keep in mind, though, is that, you need to, as a result of your experience, make the recommendations, what you feel would be best for residents regarding public records and open meetings, not what the Board of Supervisors will or will not pass. You give them your best recommendations, and if the Board of Supervisors don't agree with you, then the public can then request that it be put on the ballot through initiative without the Board of Supervisors. So, in summary, I think it's a good idea that you work on the 5 or 6 issues that are most in need of reform. Thank you.
Further public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed, but I want to stretch this out a little bit and pose some questions and invite responses from members of the public. First of all, with regards to Mr. Crossman's comments on what happened with Prop G, just to give you a little bit of history. I was part of the organization, San Franciscans for Sunshine, that eventually wound up getting Prop G on the ballot. After Prop G was drafted, we actually went to individual supervisors to see if we could get 4 to sign off on it. The only one who would do it was Tom Amiano. And so we had gone, going in, we had expected that if we could get 4 to sign off on it, we would probably have to make some compromises, but we didn't get 4. And so we went back and decided, okay, we're going to take this to the voters ourselves, circulating petitions, and we don't have to make any compromises. We can put this on the ballot exactly as we've written it. So we did, and it worked. And we got Prop G passed 58 to 42. With respect to what happened with the package in 2004, we went to the entire board, and the board president at the time assigned it to committee. I believe it was rules, but I'm not absolutely certain. But the matter was assigned to a committee, and that committee inserted something like 23 amendments of its own that the task force found, most of which the task force found unacceptable, and we wound up having to lobby quite vigorously against putting what had been our own package on the ballot before the voters. And so our thought this time around is not to take it to the full board, because the same thing would probably happen, but rather to find 4 sunshine-friendly supervisors to get it on the ballot. Since it's not a charter amendment, all it would take is 4 supervisors to sign off on it. They would have to have a public hearing, but that's that's not necessarily a hurdle. Once the public hearing is held, then they have the discretion to act in the manner they see fit. Mr. Crossman has also said, and I think there's some validity in what he says, that we have a body of work already in place that perhaps we should continue to work on. My question is, and I will invite public comment on this, my question is, how about if we first narrow our focus to the half dozen or so items that we feel most urgently need addressing, and then, at some later time, come back and address those other items that are not so urgent but still could help clarify what the ordinance says. Mr. Crossman, Mr. Grossman, if anyone else cares to continue this discussion, please step to the microphone.
Team Crossman, sure, if you guys want to come up with another list of things that you think aren't addressed in the draft ordinance. I mean, a lot of issues have been addressed in the draft ordinance, but if you think there's additional items, hot pressing issues that haven't been addressed, then yeah, go ahead and work up what you think you should want to do, and then maybe direct Mr. Snyder or ask Mr. Grossman to then propose a way to write those changes into the current draft. That might be an approach you could consider.
Yeah, my own thing is some of the issues that are in the current draft are among those, are in those 6. In other words, we're not throwing out the current draft entirely. The current draft is going to include some of the things we want to address most urgently. That's my thinking anyway.
Cool. Well, is there a list? I haven't seen that list of 5 or 10 items.
No, we're just starting on that now.
Right. So that's probably the first step.
That's the first step. Other public comment? Okay, member Wolf.
No, Mr. President.
So I was just going to say, I'm not looking to bring up any additional items, but to pick, some of the multitudes of changes that have worked on over the years, so that at least we can get some change and not all change. I think going to the ballot, I mean, it's a tough road right now to go to the ballot to try and collect 35,000 signatures. But I think the hardest road to climb is that the language would have to somewhat be approved by a city attorney, because it has to be of form, and he would probably balk by saying that it could cause the city to be sued or something. They'd find some reason to try and stall it from the petitions getting out. So I have some concern about that. My other concern is what happened in November's election, where there were a number of ballot items that were passed by, I don't know whether it was by the supervisors that put it, as a board, put it on the ballot, or whether it was just 4 that were looking to put items on the ballot and the president of the board had pulled them before the ballot booklet went out to print. One, for instance, was the splitting of the appointments for the Rec and Park Commission, because it was an amendment to the charter, so he had the privilege of being able to pull it.
Didn't have enough votes.
No, I thought they did, and it got pulled. Okay. Yeah. Well, my concern is whether the president of the Board of Supervisors has any privilege of being able to pull items that are passed by other supervisors, and I don't know what the rules are on that.
Okay. We can query the clerk of the board on that. She would probably know.
Yeah. Either way, it's a tough road. I mean, either way, taking it to the ballot ourselves and try to mount a campaign, there's a period of time to collect signatures. We can't start now. There's a period of time. So, would that be the will? Is there the will to do that? And can we call upon Sunshine, members of the public that are Sunshine advocates to help with that? And for sake of a better way, try to get 4 supervisors to put it on the ballot.
Member Johnson?
Just to try to understand where the discussion is going. From what I'm hearing, it doesn't sound like you've ever been successful through the board. Is that Is that correct?
So far, well, actually, the original sunshine ordinance was enacted by the board.
But the other two attempts through the board
But
were,
the other two attempts were, that's true, they were unsuccessful.
so without having some sort of discussion with the members of the board, we'd almost have to plan to go with the signatures for the voters.
Well, I'm not sure that the task force could do that. I mean, I think the task force would have to basically make a report to the Board of Supervisors, suggest changes, and see what, if anything, the board did. We could certainly encourage citizens to do what they felt was necessary and appropriate in this regard, but I think our own authority in this would be very limited.
You mean we wouldn't be able to advocate with the signatures?
I think we could. I think we could advocate before the board, but how much advocacy we could have with the public, I'm really not sure. Mr. Grossman, I believe you had something you wanted to say?
As much as I think this is important, which I really do, I've always felt that the ordinance wasn't all that bad if the city departments and officials acted in good faith, and that would include the city attorney's office, because it has all of the elements. The problem is that over time, and I know I sound like a broken record, the task force influence on the department's officials and the city attorney's office to do the right thing is diminished and was, of course, undercut almost completely by the Ethics Commission. But that part, I think, is being fixed, so you don't really have to, I don't think you have to spend a lot of time fixing the ordinance to get enforcement powers that should be and are properly in the hands of the Ethics Commission. But what I do see is that if you work very hard to create a set of rules on these 6 or 5 or 6 points, you're going to take away from the focus, I think, on getting it right at the task force level right now. Because I've seen enough now where between this silly 6-vote rule, which could be fixed, but nobody seems to want to, and between the way in which the mayor and the clerk of the board and some of the other departments have marginalized the task force, it doesn't make any difference what you put in the ordinance. What's important is that this forum be strong and have an effect on the respondents who show up. And somehow that's been lost. The fact is that the mayor and the clerk of the board haven't had an ex officio member for what, almost a year? Half a year in the case, or maybe a little longer in the case of the clerk, but the mayor, it's been well over a year. So that kind of tells you the story. So, I mean, go ahead if you want to do it. I think you have to get the people to do it, and they have to show up, and they have to read the stuff. But I really think that to the extent it takes energy away from the focus of the task force, it would not be helpful to what I think is the main goal of the task force. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we ready to move forward then? to item number 2. Mr. Clerk, could you call item number 2, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 2 is, if the task force has opted for option A in item 1, consideration of amendments to Sunshine Ordinances Articles 3 and 4, or if the task force has opted for option B in item number 1, consideration of amendments to Sunshine Ordinance Article 1 and subsequent articles as time and quorum factors permit.
Thank you. Let us go, let's just start with item 1, or with Article 1. That is basically our mission statement. Findings and purpose and citation. Is there anything there that any of you sees as being on the urgent side, something that we really need to fix right now? Member Washburn.
Oh, yes, I think we should be called the Sunshine Commission.
Okay.
I think that'll help our stature a bit.
Is that really urgent? I mean,
I think it's important, and I don't think it's. It can be something that is. Could that be something that's part of the minor changes that just happen that we don't? Does it have to be one of our featured 5 or 6? Can it be a change of language? I think it's an important change of language, but does it have to count against our major items?
Member Chan?
I believe this is probably the easiest to do, because all you need to do is just change Sunshine Task Force to Commission. This is a word, and that's the easiest to do. And I believe that this ordinance is voted by the people, right? And out of other task force out there, right? Have any other task force been voted by the people?
I don't have knowledge. I don't have knowledge on that one way or the other.
I don't think so. From my knowledge, my opinion.
Member Johnson?
Through the chair, is Member Chan's, is that relevant to whether or not we can change it? I think it's a good idea to change it to the Sunshine Commission. People don't, I think it would put us on a more equal level with the other commissions, and sometimes people are surprised when I explain that we conduct hearings between members of the public and the department, like we're a jury. And I think that it would add a psychological component, and it's easy.
Okay, one thing that we need to bear in mind is that if we change that, if we propose that change, then we have to go through the entire ordinance and see where it says task force and change that to commission.
Some of that's been done.
It's been done
been
already.
done.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been done.
But
yeah.
the point I'm making is then all of those language changes have to be voted on. It's so much more that we're putting before the voters. What I'm saying is, you have all of a sudden so many more articles in front of the voters' eyes that and they're already going to be voting on 6 or 7. Now all of a sudden, here's a whole host of them, maybe 30 of them, that they have to vote to amend. And Member Washburn.
But I guess what I was asking initially is this the type of thing that could be done at the board level? You mentioned that some of it seems to me to be a bigger deal than that, but I think it's also a simple thing. It's a simple thing to explain to voters. and it's an important thing.
Okay.
But I don't know. Is it? I'm just asking. Is it something that could be done almost as an editing type of thing that we're doing with some of the other minor changes?
I think that would be a question best posed to the city attorney. Member Wolf, Member Johnson.
So I think if you want, I think changing from task force to commission could be a pretty big deal. I think there are some aspects of being a commission, I believe, in the charter that are provided not to task forces, which might be of a kind of a lower stature. But I believe that everything that we're getting is somewhat equal to what a commission already gets. My concern is if some lawmaker wants to raise a hair on it and say, you already have what you want, or use it as a wedge issue. I don't know that it's a slam dunk. I don't feel it's a slam dunk.
Member Johnson, Member Chan.
I feel like this is a little bit off topic, but I feel like we're redoing exactly the work that we've already done, because if you go through Article 1, the Sunshine Commission's already been changed. Is there some way that a couple of us, maybe the chair and the vice chair, could mention 5 or 6 things that they think maybe not just going article by article, because otherwise we might as well finish Article 3 and 4, because we're going to be going through it in the same way. Were there, when you thought of, I know since I've been on the task force, Member Wolf has mentioned maybe we could bring up 5 or 6 most important issues. Were there issues was there a list of issues that you had in mind, or did you want to go through it?
It's not that I necessarily want to go through it. There are some highlighted items, I think, that are important that I think would demand some discussion as to, the level of import priority, which ones we think are most important, that would bring the most change quickly, that would not be, that could be put, if we're going to go the voter route, collect the signatures and put it on the ballot, then I would almost say throw the whole thing out there and let's see what happens, and not change anything. If we're going to go the supervisor's route, then there's going to have to be a cell.
Could we maybe, rather than having a detailed discussion, could we maybe go through each article and just list the ones that we think are important and then go back and pick them?
Sure.
Identify candidates.
You know what I mean? Like if you said Article 1 and she brought up the commission, rather than having a big discussion right now, maybe we could create a list that way to see how many we come up with.
That's
that-
really my intention.
Okay.
We're not going to adopt any motions tonight. We're not going to. This is basically to get that list together and then maybe start the draft process from there. Member Chan.
If I remember correctly, there's some commissions out there that are, I guess, not voted on or not even in the charter. For example, Immigrants' Rights Commission.
Right.
That's one example, right? I don't even know what they do, or what kind of power that have. I mean, why would they become? I mean, why would it become Immigrant Rights Commission?
I can answer that, Mr. Chair.
Member Wolf.
That's a privilege of the mayor. That's a mayor specific. Then that commission answers specifically to the mayor. Same thing with the Disability Rights Council, the Youth Commission. There are a number of these kind of pet advisory boards that more or less serve at the pleasure of the mayor. The other commissions, so that's one type of commission. Then there are the other types of commissions that are enumerated in the charter, like the Planning Commission and the Rec and Park Commission and so on and so forth. And they have a different set of privileges and status. So, you know, it's kind of like maybe they're using the word commission too loosely. But that's where my concern comes up, is because there's so many different kinds of commissions and they have varying different authorities and jurisdictions. You know, I'm concerned about what turning the task force. I'm not so much worried, but my concern is just if we turn ourselves from a task force into a commission, does that raise any kind of flag? Red, green, yellow, doesn't matter, but does it raise any kind of flag with regards to how it legally is regarded in city government? You know, why was the task force called the task force in the first place? Why wasn't it called the commission? You know, it goes back to
could
that
answer that?
question. I can't answer that. I don't know. The chair may know.
No, I really don't. Bruce Brugman might. Bruce Brugman and Terry Frank might know.
Actually,
Let me just point out, though, that we are not in Article 1 right now. We are. I mean, that was my intention, to start with Article 1. See if there's anything in Article 1 that our name is in Article 4, Section 67.30. I suggest we hold off further discussion on that question until we reach that particular section. Is there anything in Article 1 that anyone believes urgently needs change? And the chair would ask the same question of members of the audience if they'd like to step forward. 3 minutes, please.
Hi, Keeman Crossman. I don't really think this is a good way to go about this. I have pretty significant fear that as we move on to Articles 2, 3, and 4, people are going to just try to come up with things out of thin air, be put on the spot. It's not really going to be well thought out. I would recommend that members be asked to go back, look at what the draft is, or come up with their own lists and come to the meeting prepared with their list of 5 or 6, and then have each person present their 5 or 6 issues. I think it's very ineffective to be trying to ask people to spontaneously come up with their issues on the spot in the meeting. I don't think it's a wise way to make decisions.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Well, I think if you're going to do this, you have to have all the members of the task force participate, not 6. And I think the chemo suggestion is extremely worthwhile, which is, well, each member should take the time to go back through what was done over a period, I don't know, of almost 2 years, and try to identify the 5 or 6 important issues and then try to match them up, because you may end up with anywhere from 6 to 16. So then you have to kind of pare it down, and you can't do it in this type of forum, as Chemo says, spontaneously. And I think that was one of the problems that you had when you were doing the amendment. It slowed everything down because nobody did their homework. Everybody relied on Erica or Chemo or me or Warfield or whoever, and they came unprepared, essentially, and you didn't get all of them anyway. You only got 6 or 7 at the most at any of those meetings. So I think you ought to just regroup, let everybody do their homework, including the people who aren't here, and come up with those issues and see how many are in common and how many are not, and then you can eliminate, those that are only one member may want, and work on those where there's a, you know, majority or a plurality or something. But otherwise, you're just going to waste time. And you've got a lot of important stuff once a month that you have to worry about.
Thank you. Is there further public comment?
Yes, thank you. Thomas Piccirillo. I agree with Task Force Member Washburn. It is important that you call yourselves a committee or a commission. I've heard many times from many people in the community that the task force is an advisory body with no force. So the name change, I think, would be very helpful. Regarding these 5 or 6 hot button items that should be discussed, you should start discussing them now. Asking each other what 5 or 6 items would improve the Sunshine Ordinance and make it provide for greater public meetings and requests for documents. But to spend an hour on whether or not you should be a committee, a commission, or a task force is really not helping the public. So, the suggestion that you all go home and, write out a list of recommendations is fine if that's what you'll do. But many of you won't do that. So, you have a special meeting today. So you should start discussing 5 or 6 items that will improve the Sunshine Ordinance and will provide greater transparency and open government for its residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. I think Mr. Grossman and Mr. Crossman raised what I think is an important point, and that is the question of how prepared are we tonight, each of us, to come forward with these. And in asking this question of each of you, I am not trying to put you on the spot. We all have outside commitments like jobs and family. So my question now is, do we continue with this, or should we, in fact, each of us, come back 4 weeks from tonight, each of us with a list of those items that we feel really need to address, most urgently. And I'd welcome comments from the task force. Member Washburn.
In preparing for tonight, I have to say that I read the documents you sent earlier and went through and highlighted some things, but I felt it was a rather cursory job because I didn't know the process that we were going to adopt. I didn't know whether we were in fact going to be choosing 5 or 6 or whether we were going to be going through every section exhaustively. So I like the idea of each of us going back, sitting with the ordinance, and in light of our experience on the task force, making some recommendations. But I think it would be helpful if we would submit them maybe a week before the meeting or a few days before the meeting, so that we have a chance to become familiar with like the whole pool of items. I think that would help that next meeting go more smoothly.
Okay. Member Johnson?
I agree with that, but if we could just take a few minutes, I would also like to hear some other people's ideas. Like, mine are always a little different from everybody else's. I mean, some of it's because I haven't been here, but like when I went back and looked through it, I know we haven't arrived at Article, well, it kind of went forward and past 6721E, but one of the things, because the Ethics Commission brought it up, 6721E only requires attendance at task force hearings related to documents, and I would like for that to be, I think that's important to have for meetings, which is in Article 2. So that's one of the, I had written down 5 or 6 that I thought were important, but wanted to compare them to get an idea of what style of things people would think were important so that I could try to focus on that as well, because I tried to take some of my cues a little bit from, we all had discussed the lack of enforcement of the ordinance and our lack of penalty power. And when the Ethics Commission returns things, I was reading through them, and one of the things that they're not going to enforce is our version of 6721E. So I don't know if other people can offer something that they, think is a good focus, or what they have in mind when we say this, so we could just have that in mind as well.
Okay. Member Wolf?
Well, for me, the important question is are we going to the supervisors, or are we going to the ballot?
Well,
Because if we're going to the ballot, then I would say, just put the whole thing forward.
it has to go to the ballot.
No, I understand it, but I mean, if the public, if we take it to the voters and collect the signatures, if we're going to go with that route, then there's nothing to change.
I'm not sure that the task force could decide to do that.
No, but members individually can
Members
decide
individually
to do
could
that.
do that, but we could not, it would not be anything the task force could enforce. If that's what we decide now we want to do, then there is no further point in holding these meetings at all.
Right. I mean, the only thing is a two-prong approach. Try going to the supervisors, see if anybody bites, and if it seems like it's too onerous, then move on to the next thing. I mean, that would be my best guess to do. I think if going back, and each of us, some folks haven't been here during the entire process of going through these amendments, so I think it would be worthwhile for folks to sit and read through them and get their own kind of perspective and view on what they are and what they mean. I'm not interested in rehashing the entire document.
And there would be one other caution that I think would be wise to note, and that is that if we take it to try and get 4 supervisors to sign off on it, and we, for one reason or another, are unsuccessful in that attempt, we would have to be very careful about all of us belonging to some kind of a campaign organization, because we could not, we could not meet with that organization. We would have to be very careful about seriatim meetings, quorum meetings outside of City Hall, if you get my drift. In other words, if 6 of us joined a pro-sunshine organization that wanted to get it on the ballot, and we all met in the same room at the same time, we could get in trouble for that. We'd have to be very careful.
I don't know.
Or even if it happened to be 3 of us who constituted the majority of one of our committees.
Yeah, I hear you.
We have to be very, very careful about that.
Mr. Chair, I have more concern about the entire Board of Trustees of City College attending the graduation ceremonies together, sitting next to each other on stage and talking amongst each other, and it can be an earshot of that. I'm more concerned about that. That, to me, is blatant. And we used to sit in the balconies screaming Brown Act all the time. It's every year. So, I think for this activity, to me, it constitutes an extracurricular activity. We're not discussing business before the task force. No agenda. It's not an agenda item, as far as making decisions that would come before us. We're performing in a civic activity.
Granted, but when the opposition plants people inside our campaign organization and then starts bringing these things to the surface, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I hear you.
I am just saying
I hear
we
you.
have to be very careful.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Now,
So none of us walk into the office at all.
okay.
The campaign office.
Is there a consensus then for the approach that Mr. Grossman and Mr. Crossman suggested, that we come back next month, each of us, with a list of the 5 or 6 things that we think need fixing most urgently, that maybe a week in advance, we submit that in writing, and it can go in as part of the informational packet. Does that, Member Chad?
Make a comment on that. If you guys want to go through the ballot, you know, I'll do my 100% and see this thing go through. I'll mount a good team to get signatures, and I could get kids to do this. So
I'm up for that.
Member from the audience.
Thank you. Okay. I think that's. I think that we are at a consensus that this is the approach we're going to take. Then, before adjourning the meeting, we have not had general public comment, and there was a gentleman who raised his hand. I would invite you to come forward, sir. Identify yourself if you wish.
I'm Jay Costa. I would like to address 2 sort of general points with regard to what you've been discussing so far. One is with regard to sort of like the method that you have reached consensus about in addressing what should or shouldn't be changed or amended. And I think that going home and, you know, each taking some time with the proposed amendments would be a good thing, but at least to me, it would be helpful to hear you each speak, if ever so briefly, to, you know, at a conceptual level, what you have seen as the impediments to your sort of strength as a force, such, you know, so that when, I don't know, that would inform my ability to then take that to the actual language, you know, in terms of addressing things in a more line item oriented manner. So that's one point. I don't know if that would be helpful for you, but the second point is with regard to this sort of idea of taking 2 possible approaches to passing amendments or amended language, one being taking something to the board and another being an election-based, a vote-based approach. I think that from a political standpoint, a ballot initiative-based approach would be much more successful in 2012 when there will be higher turnout at the polls. I just think that, and I think that there will be a lot more power to that sort of effort, behind that sort of effort, if you can show that you have made an effort, another attempt to like go through the standard channel of bringing your amendments to the board. And hopefully they pass, but if they don't, I think there's a lot more power in terms of the case that you can make to voters. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Costa, just to clarify, because the current ordinance was passed by the voters in 1999, in most cases, amendments to the ordinance must go before the voters. There are some exceptions on that where the board can enact certain things and has done so. But for the most part, because the current ordinance was enacted by the voters, then only the voters can change it. What we've been talking about is how to get it on the ballot, whether to take it before, try to get 4 supervisors to sign off on it, or get it there through signature gathering. That's what we're really weighing here, not whether to put it on the ballot, but how to get it there. That's what we've been talking about.
Okay, thanks.
But thank you for your comments, and thank you for joining us. Sir?
Thomas Piccirillo again. I think you're really making this more complicated than it is. You've all been sitting as task force members, and you know the problems of what are the obstacles of the Sunshine Ordinance not getting implemented. I don't really think that it's that much of an issue as to whether or not your proposals go to the Board of Supervisors for them to put on the ballot, or your recommendations go directly to the voters. They're still going to address the problems with the present Sunshine Ordinance. So the conversation as to which audience you want to target, I don't think is helpful. What would be helpful is for you to decide what are the obstacles that are denying the public records or transparency in open meetings. I mean, I've been coming to this task force for, I don't know, a couple of years now. And, you know, I can give you 6. The orders of determination aren't being enforced. The respondents aren't showing up. We all know what are the 5 or 6 obstacles of the Sunshine Ordinance not getting implemented. The other problem is I don't see enough communications between the task force and the Board of Supervisors. I don't know, you don't send them any quarterly reports. You don't make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. There's not enough communications. So you may have more allies on the Board of Supervisors than you realize. You need to communicate more with the Board of Supervisors, give them your ideas, and if your ideas are rejected by the Board of Supervisors because they have their own agendas, then bottom line is you take it to the voters. But first, you need to figure out what the obstacles are regarding enforcing the Sunshine Ordinance, giving it to the Board of Supervisors, whether it's in quarterly reports or however you want to communicate with them, but the communication so far is absent. There isn't any, as far as I can tell. And then if the board rejects it, then Plan B, you take it to the voters directly. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for your information, sir, we do submit an annual report to the board, and it should be available on our website. And we certainly encourage you to read it and see if there, you might look at it and decide that there's some points that we missed or some points that we got incorrect. We would certainly welcome any input you would care to give us on that, or not. That's up to you. At this time, we will take public comment on matters not on today's agenda. Seeing none, public comment is closed. Any announcements?
Go ahead.
No, you go.
Member Wolf, Member Johnson.
Many of you may have received a letter or a report that I had done on a specific section of charter code regarding appointive boards and committees and how quorum is calculated and what the proper number of members present to take a vote would be. I spent quite a bit of time on this because I was annoyed at a hearing around the Haight-Ashbury Recycling Center the other day, hearing that the Park and Rec Open Space Committee, they have 23 members, of which something like 12 or 13 showed up, and they passed a resolution, and the vote tally was 9-4, and it failed because they are saying that it has to be a majority of the total number of members of that advisory council to be present, and they never are ever able to get 23 people to show up. So it's somewhat kind of falls in the range. I think it's a misread of that particular part of the law, and that part of the law, the Park and Rec refers to with regards to their advisory committees and even themselves. My thing is I think it's part of the charter. It's like Article 4. It's in the very beginning. It's specific to appointive boards and commissions, including, folks like us. And I think it applies. And if you read it, I break it down sentence by sentence. And in general legal standards, the opening sentence is what kind of sets the stage for the entire paragraph. If there are no subsections of the paragraph, it's just one big paragraph with 5 or 6 sentences. So the theme and the sense of and the intent starts at the beginning. It flows all the way through, and then in one sentence, it describes how votes can be taken. Not this is the way it should be taken, but how votes should be taken. So I want this to be brought up on the agenda for the next meeting. I think we need to have a serious discussion about it. It's not necessarily in our jurisdiction as far as taking an opinion. We can take an opinion and send it on through, but I think it demands on how we run our meetings.
Mr. Rustin.
Mr. Chair, we need to put it on the agenda before going in such wide discussion on the subject.
I disagree. I'm making a presentation. I'm not necessarily.
This
We're
is-
all here. We're in
Excuse
quorum.
me. Member Wolf, I received your email on this, and I would have asked that it be put on the agenda. However, we have a very, very long agenda coming up at our next regular meeting. We have a cartload of complaints, and just in order to be fair to the complainants and the respondents, I'm going to keep it off the agenda for this next meeting. However, again, this is a question that has been raised particularly by Mr. Grossman, and I think it is worth exploring, and that was my main reason for wanting to reconstitute the Rules Committee. I had intended to wait until the 2 vacancies on the task force were filled before doing that. However, I don't think that'll be necessary because we have indications that Member Cawthon will be rejoining us soon, and it is my intention to reconstitute the committee at that time, and then the committee can go forward with that question, the Rules Committee. And that's not to undermine what you've said or the importance thereof. I think it is important. It is worth exploring. There are a whole bunch of questions that I have on it, and I'd certainly like to participate in the discussion when it comes about. Member Johnson.
I would like to. I have a question about the Governor Brown's issue with the agendas and not. When I heard it on the news, my understanding was that he was just cutting off the funding that the state sometimes provides for the local municipalities, counties, and cities to post agendas. I don't know if he's suspending the money. He's not trying to change the fact that they would still have to post the agendas.
Right.
And I thought that it might be valuable if I'm not even sure if this is possible, but if it's permissible, I guess is a better word. If the task force either provided a letter, recommendation to the Board of Supervisors or a press release stating that the law is still the law in San Francisco, that the Sunshine Ordinance still requires the same meeting agenda postings.
Well, I would be happy, as chair of the task force, to draft a statement. My question is, we don't have an attorney with us now. Okay, our voting attorney member is not here. Mr. Threet is not here. So if we drafted a statement, I'm wondering how much force of law it would really have. We could draft a statement asking for some kind of a statement by the city attorney as to how, if at all, Governor Brown's stance on this applies to San Francisco, particularly since we have a Sunshine Ordinance that is stronger than the Brown Act. That might be one way of going about it. For us to, or we could issue a cautionary note to the Board of Supervisors asking that it be circulated to all of the boards and commissions in the city. There are a number of things we can do here, but again, right now at least, anything that would come from us would be without that attorney's voice in there. So, how do we want to proceed on this? Is there a consensus that I should send a letter to the city attorney or to the board? Where should we go with this, Member Wolf?
I think it's kind of, I don't think we need the power or of an attorney's voice behind it. I think it's just a reminder. It's just a simple reminder that, don't be tempted because the governor's threatening to cut the budget on this particular activity, which seems very suspect to me because I can't really add up enough money to determine why it would cost so much, for walking it over to the library or into the clerk's office. Or putting it up on a website. It doesn't really cost anything. I don't get it. But I think just a reminder from the task force that the Sunshine Ordinance is still in effect, no matter what. And despite, and it's just a reminder not to be tempted.
We also, it might be a good idea to wait and see what the legislature does. I mean, this is a budgetary item
Right.
that the governor is suggesting, and it might be a good idea to wait. It might not be necessary to do anything if the legislature shoots him down. Leland Yee is probably going to fight him tooth and nail on that. So if the legislature doesn't go along with this, then we needn't do anything. Member Johnson?
You're saying I think the problem with that, but again, it's me and it's my style. The problem with waiting is that if they approve it, it's too late. If you don't make people aware of it, if the legislature goes along with it, it's too late. And on KGO, when I heard it, they took what Member Wolf just said about how much can it cost to say that the cities and counties have been using that provision to overbill the state. And I just think that it would be a nice, an appropriate and timely response to say, no matter what you've heard, this is the Sunshine Ordinance, this is the law as it stands, regardless of the budget. I think if you wait to respond to it and they approve it, your response will mean nothing. It would just be you saying we don't like it.
Well, okay, Member Wolf.
So I would just say I'm reading some of the article, and just to speak to your question and my question, the article says suspending funding for the Brown Act that deals with open government is expected to save the state $63 million in outstanding claims dated back to 2004. But that's talking about something else. That's not posting of agendas. I mean, to me, this is just a lot of rhetoric being thrown around. And for all I know, it's just kind of low-hanging, it may be just low-hanging fruit for the media because the budget, doesn't have anything else sensational or exciting except that everything's getting cut. And this is, in a sense, is going to violate Prop, 59? Prop 59, which amended the California Constitution to give public access to information about people's business, requiring meetings of public bodies and records.
Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution, I believe, the California Constitution, I believe.
So,
Member Wolf? I'm sorry, Member Johnson.
I also, it just seems like there's more, if we don't make some kind of a statement, there's more and more and more open government things being I don't want to say violated, but being cut into a little tiny bit at a time. And if they can make it sound like 64 million, this is what they did to the Muni drivers. Whether you agree or disagree with them how much money they make, they villainized them in the public and did it for a long time before the vote happened. And by them making it sound like it's all this money, it just is, it's making open government things seem like they're costing more and more money. And one of my concerns too is that at the end of the budget last year, several of the supervisors here have commented on how much money the Sunshine Task Force was taking up and the ordinance and enforcing it and our budget. So I don't know what the consensus would be of a response, but I think saying nothing is contributing to them cutting away at this open government. We were talking earlier about the people in Wisconsin, although, how long before their meetings aren't posted because of this, and then thousands can't gather. How long? It's like cutting off Twitter and cutting off, your access. It's a way of doing it. Although I don't know if we're having a discussion now or not, or whether you could put it on the agenda if you draft something, or if you.
Member Washburn.
I think that it would be a good idea to remind the city agencies and so forth that they're going to have to continue noticing meetings regardless of what happens in Sacramento. But I think if we're going to write the letter, we ought to do it like right away while this is still in people's minds. And it may be a moot point, but if nothing happens, if the budget isn't really cut.
Member Wolf.
Two things. One is that the only other costs I can think that this covers is mailing. That agendas have to be mailed out, people who request them, and so on and so forth. And I don't know what it costs at the state level for however their posting needs to happen. But the article also mentions that Senator Leland Yee has introduced proposed constitutional amendment that would enshrine the open meetings rule as a legal requirement, forcing government bodies to provide notice about meetings regardless of whether they're paid to do so or not. And so he's trying to push that through the legislature to get it on the ballot. And it needs 2/3 vote of to do so.
I'm kind of concerned that we're starting to have a discussion about an item that's not on the agenda.
It's current events.
Well, we're talking, this is announcements.
Yeah, it's current events.
Well, maybe since there is still more brewing, perhaps we should.
I think you're through the chair. I think you're correct, Member Johnson. I think we can't be silent on it. We're the watchdogs. Okay, we're watchdogging this. This is an item that's in our purview. I think it's our prerogative, if not our responsibility, to let the rest of the city family know.
Let me suggest something. Mr. Rustum, is there still time to add any items to the agenda for the next regular meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I will put this matter on the agenda for the next regular meeting on February 22nd. We can adopt a formal request then for the chair to send a letter, to send a statement. Fair enough? Okay. Other announcements? Chair has one announcement. The Society of Professional Journalists Northern California chapter will have its annual James Madison Awards on the evening of Wednesday, March 16th at the New Delhi restaurant in San Francisco. This dinner honors champions of the First Amendment and sunshine, and I certainly encourage sunshine people interested in sunshine to attend this dinner. It's always a very good event. Chair will entertain a motion. Member Johnson.
Are we going to send out, I don't know where this belongs in here, but is there going to be a notice sent to the other members who are not here to prepare a list of the items?
Yes, I will send it out in writing, and I will also invite comments from members of the public.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
So move.